But the Bible tells us he is completely overwhelmed. And he's scared for his life. This threat scares him, and he completely falls apart. And so the first moment that we see here is what I call the wall. Elijah hits the wall. In sports language, maybe you've heard it called bonking. It's when you just totally, your body just runs out of fuel. Your glycogen, stores just are completely depleted. If you've ever seen like a marathon, I watched my wife run a half marathon, and as she was turning the corner towards the very end of the race, her body was just totally hitting the wall, and it wasn't really a run. It was like kind of like this, you've seen people crawl towards the finish line. It's just like, it happens physically, it happens emotionally, it happens mentally, it happens spiritually when we just hit that wall. Maybe for you, the wall is grief. And I'm not sure how long ago it was. It doesn't really matter, and everyone grieves in different ways, but maybe if you're honest with yourself, that's the thing that it just stopped you in your tracks. Or maybe it was a health thing, a diagnosis, and your whole world got turned upside down. Or a friend of yours, your whole world got turned upside down. Or maybe it was a failure, a sin. You fell short. You fell short of your standards and God's standards, or your spouse's standards, or you let someone down. Or maybe it was success. I heard recently someone said, failure will leave you dead. Failure will kill you, but success will bury you alive. Success is one of those things, if you've experienced success or maybe at the top, where it can almost be suffocating. And that can actually become a wall. I mean, think about Elijah. He's coming off of the greatest moment in his career, perhaps, and then he just totally hits the wall. For me, it was a Thursday afternoon, and if you go back about 7 years before this Thursday afternoon, my dad was diagnosed with leukemia. Many of you've heard about that, and we battled for about 4 years. It was very tough, and within those 4 years, I took on more responsibility and more leadership here at Inland Hills, and then in 2015, I took on, we passed the baton. I became the point lead, and the last couple of years has been incredible. I mean, God has done some amazing things in the church, and it's been a lot of fun, and we've experienced a lot of success. Last year, we had the largest attendance in the history of Inland Hills. Last year's budget was, we had the best looking budget in the history of Inland Hills Church. I mean, so things have been going well, and God has been moving, and that's been fun and incredible to be a part of. But it's been this interesting balance, because on one hand, you have a church that's growing and thriving and moving, and then you have a pastor who's kind of crumbling and exhausted and weak and tired. About 7 months before this Thursday afternoon when I hit the wall is when one of the stalkers showed up to one of our houses. And the nature of the role these days with social media and the spotlight and the rise of mental illness, we have several stalkers, believe it or not. And this individual showed up and was pretty dangerous. And we had to take some serious measures. And it caused me and Kayla to have to sell our home, and my mom to sell her home, and we purchased a place together. We've told you about this before. And so that was kind of going on. And that moment when he showed up, and about 7 months before this Thursday breakdown, it really began this downward spiral where physically I was not okay. In that period, had 2 surgeries to remove a softball-sized mass from my chest. I've passed 60 kidney stones now, which I'm very excited about. Those are my babies. Oh, yeah. And we're working on getting that resolved. That's, kind of slowing down. But then I thought, on top of all of this, we should go to India and Africa for 3 weeks. And so I hopped on a plane, and I'm overseas, and I started to experience panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and was working with a wellness doctor on this. And then we thought, yeah, let's get back from India. And then a few days later, I spoke 7 Easter services. And on Good Friday, before the first service, one of the security guards who helps, follow me around found me on the bathroom floor in the offices, just with this extreme panic. And that's when we really started to know that something wasn't right. And then we got through Easter, and I just kind of said, well, it's jet lag, and I'm okay, and I can keep going, like Kaylee was saying. And then Thursday afternoon happened. And I was upstairs at the house at the time. Kayla and the boys were downstairs, and I freaked out. It was actually the flooring guy who called and said that the floor wasn't going to be installed in time, and that triggered me, and I went into this full-on panic attack. And if you've ever been in one or been around someone that's in the middle of a real panic attack, it's a scary thing. I was in fear for my life. I thought I was going to die. I was pacing back and forth. I wasn't making sense. Kayla was begging me to go to the hospital. I was refusing. I was refusing to take any medication. I was like, girl, I got a message to preach on Sunday. I am not going to the hospital. And I was totally whacked out of my mind. It took 2 doctors on the phone to convince me to go. So Kayla drove me to Pomona Valley Hospital and to the ER. I wasn't even able to walk. They put me in a wheelchair, wheeled me in. And I had my sunglasses on. I still remember. I had my sunglasses on because I thought that like everybody at Inland Hills Church was going to be at the hospital watching me go through this breakdown. And I was thinking these wild thoughts, and I thought that someone was going to kill me, and so I was like hiding. And so they rushed me immediately right to the back. I got in, and that's like half the battle, right, in the ER. I got in. And then they put me in this hallway, and they were telling me that there was no room. They were like, we have no rooms available. And then, I don't remember most of this, but Kayla said I was saying some pretty outlandish stuff. Like, I was saying, like, I know so-and-so, call them, I can get a room, do you know who I am? Like, stupid stuff like that. Can you believe it? I was saying that with my sunglasses on in the hospital. Like, who do I think I am? And I lost it. And then this gentleman comes over to me, and he says, hey, Pastor Drew. And I'm like, oh my gosh, all my fears are coming true. Like, and then he says, I saw you over there, and I said, that guy doesn't look so good. And then he said, I looked closer, and wait a second, that's Pastor Andrew. And then he went on to say, I am the doctor here at the ER. So then I got a private room real quick, which was pretty cool. I'm not going to complain about that, so I'm really thankful for that. That was awesome. And then the nurse put in the IV, and she's like, hey, Pastor Andrew, I go to your church. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they really all are here. And like they're watching me go through this panic attack, and I'm breaking down, It was like so scary. So I don't remember much of what happened next, but around 9 or 10, I get back to the house, and we're in the living room with the board of directors, the elders, the leadership staff, my family. And they said, you know what, Drew? We don't think it's a good idea that you get on stage this Sunday. And I said, you know what? I agree. And that was the wall. The wall was me coming to the end of myself, saying, I can't. And you know what? When you can hit the wall and say, I can't, that's when you can begin to acknowledge that God can. That's the moment when He can take over and the healing process can begin. So if that's where you're at, and maybe you're still trying to grind it out and fight it out and, push through, I would suggest hit that wall and let God step in.